I could feel that. I could just feel it. Like I could feel the laughter from you at me just coming through the interwebs. I could feel it. And you're on mute. That's the quote of 2020 is you're on mute.
Dang it. I normally get to do that to you. I am confused and somewhat offended. What do you mean?
Feel it. I couldn't see you during the opening. I couldn't see you, but I could feel it. I could
feel me laughing at you.
Yes, I could feel it.
You get such an awesome game face on in our intro music, just preparing. I'm over here kind of jamming out to the music, going, yeah, getting ready. You are okay. Nope. Gotta get prepared. How are we gonna start this off?
Dude,
what episode number are we on?
Snurdly.
What episode number are we on?
I don't even remember what episode number we're on. I forgot to look.
Hold on.
Forgot to look. Yeah, hold on.
Pull it up.
Yeah, right here. This is episode 9 of season 3.
Season 3, episode 9.
Number 37. We've done 37 of these things.
That's right. And a lot more to go.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Don't lament.
No lamentations.
No lamentations.
No. So it's all good. But yes, we are definitely well, how should we say, back.
We are back
for another episode. As I mentioned, this was episode, what did I say? 9 of season 3, number 37. 37, right? 37? Yeah, 37. All right.
It was correct 10 minutes ago. So
all right. Well, so here we are. And as always here at the Fusion Underground, we try to make sense of the world by having principled discussions about such topics as entertainment, current events, politics, and culture. Our mission is to educate people to become critical thinkers so they can live more empowered and happier lives. As always, I'm your host, Manuel Ramirez, and joined in the virtual studio, the lovely, the wonderful Jason Moret. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, brother. I'm good.
So we are just a few days away from Christmas.
Yes, we are.
Are you all set for Christmas?
I have my hat on.
I see you have your Santa hat on.
That's right. I had to move my poof ball to the other side so I could get headset on.
The poof ball? Is that the technical term?
I don't know. I tucked the bell. I have a bell tied to the end of this, though. I had to tuck it in the brim. Otherwise, all we would hear was jingling.
Okay. Oh, I heard it there for a second.
Heard it there?
Yeah.
It's really loud. I got it at this bell is from the Polar Express.
Okay.
When my wife and I took her nephew a few years ago here at the Grand Canyon Railway.
And you're not referring to the movie. Explain to people what the Polar Express is.
So the here in Williams, just out of Flagstaff, the Grand Canyon Railway, they run a train which goes up normally to the Grand Canyon. Well, during the holiday season, they run the Polar Express. So you show up and it's nighttime and you wear your pajamas and you actually get on the train and they read the Polar Express, the storybook, and you head up to the North Pole, which is a place they have all decorated. And of course, Santa is there, and you kind of relive the movie, and it's really cool. And the kids like it. Actually, I had a blast when I went. So it's a really neat experience if you've never done that or
Very
anything
cool.
like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do anything like the Polar Express yesterday. I wanted to tell you this. So yesterday,
but you were afraid because I was going to make fun of you. Oh,
no. No.
No, you're going to do it now. Go ahead.
So yesterday we went to a Christmas party. Okay.
You wait. Time out.
Yeah.
You left your house to go to a party with other people?
Well, yes. And you have to understand that I had to prepare for this for 2 weeks. So
I believe that. Keep going.
So we only went for a few hours, just for a couple of hours.
You had the discussion prior to. I know you did.
Well,
we're going to go.
We even took separate cars.
So that way you could say, nope, that's it.
Right.
I'm out.
I'm
I
out.
said I was going to be there for 2.35 hours,
Yeah.
and my alarm's gone off, and it's
Yeah.
time for me to go.
Yeah. So, so we got there, and it was at first it was fine. And, but what was interesting, what I found very, very interesting was the present exchange. So they did like a white elephant.
Uh-huh.
You're familiar with the whole white elephant gift exchange and the
Yes.
rules of the white elephant gift exchange. So we brought one present
Mhm.
and to contribute to the white elephant, like a bottle of wine and some chocolates, whatever. And so it became time to do the white elephant gift exchange. And I've participated in those in the past, usually through work, and they can be a lot of fun.
Yes, I can.
And I know that they can take a few hours to get through the exchange.
Depending upon how big and how many times a gift can be stolen and what some of
Right.
the quote unquote house rules of the exchange are. But yes, it
Sure.
can.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They can take a couple of hours, which is one of the reasons why I told Kristen, I said, look, you're really the one participating in the white elephant exchange. I'm just kind of there. If things are going too long or whatever, I'm just going to bow out and leave. But what was interesting about it was, well, the very first gift that was, when we first started, right?
Uh-huh.
This a lady, she pulls a gift. It's a gift bag. She opens it up, and there's a ball gag in the. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh no.
I don't know these people.
Time to
Like
bow out. I'm gonna
like,
go.
like I don't know anybody here.
I don't know
Right?
the room. Is this
And,
for realsies or is this joke? Because I need to know whether I need to sit attentively and watch or turn around and roll out.
right. It was so funny because there were like these two old guys right off to the side, and the lady, she pulls it out of the bag, and one of the guys that he says, he's looking at it, he's like,
What is that?
so is that like a collar with a bell on it? Yeah, just go with that one.
Yep, that's what it is. You want it?
Very festive.
Your wife will love it.
But a few more people started pulling gifts, and as they pulled gifts from the tree, and they were unwrapping them, whatever, and you quickly saw that most of the gifts were alcohol, and that's usually what I expect.
Okay.
But what was amazing, I think there's only like 17 people participating in the white elephant exchange. But after about the fifth or the sixth present that was pulled, like I started noticing that nobody was stealing gifts.
Okay.
And in fact, it started to kind of turn into it became very Lord of the Flies ish, because like one person wanted to steal a present from this other lady, and she was like, no, you're not stealing this, and she walked out. She like took the present and walked out the back out the back door. And so like people were unwrapping their presents, and they were just like, oh, it's like, this is something I can eat, and they were just like eating it so that nobody else would steal the presents. And I'm like, I've never seen this. Like,
this is not normal behavior.
Right. The lady who walked out the backyard, she's like guzzling, it was like whiskey or something. It was some alcoholic. There was like a bottle of alcohol or whatever. And she's like pounding it because she's like, nobody's going to steal this from me. I'm just going to drink it. And they're just like, and people are like breaking into it. I'm just like, this is so strange to
This
me.
is not normal. No, that's all the fun is stealing gifts and having it come back. And especially if you do like a husband and wife team because if you bring two, then we got double the stealing power. And then because you talk it over with the wife. Okay, I'm going to steal that, but then you can steal it from me, and then I can't steal it from you, but then I can get this, and it's locked. And, and you start calling names across over at people. Would you come over here and steal this? I'll come over. I know where you live, and blah, blah, blah. That's how my family at least worked. Oh, so that was family for me. If I didn't clarify that. I mean, that's like we're all at each other.
Yeah.
And then of course the last person, at least in our family, the last person that like
gets to steal.
They can steal whatever the heck they want.
Right.
So yeah, everybody's searching. Oh man, that gets angry and a lot of fun.
Right.
And a lot of name calling.
But so this was the fastest white elephant I've ever seen. Like it was over in 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, if you got, 15 people and nobody's allowed to steal anything and
Right.
people are
Nobody
chowing
was
down the
stealing anything.
presents as they're still opening stuff,
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, you want to just make sure you keep all your digits
Right.
intact so they don't get accidentally, chewed off by somebody sitting there mowing down a gift
I mean,
next to you.
it was like people like opening gifts and like licking it. I dare you to come and take it.
Yeah. Just take a gift and go, no, I'm not even going to open it. So,
Right.
take this out to the car, go home.
Yeah, it was a bit strange. So and then it was about 9 o'clock when everything finished, and then we left. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, that
So
is very weird.
yeah.
That is very weird.
Yeah.
So I,
Well,
I always wanted to do a big massive like gift exchange. Did you ever see the movie The Santa Claus 2? I'm
yes.
thinking of the second one
Yes. Yes.
where Tim Allen shows up at the teachers faculty Christmas party,
Mhm.
and he's got all the old like games and stuff like that, and all these adults are playing like toss across and rock'em sock'em robots and
Yeah.
eating, making all the little bugs and stuff. That it was like a mad scientist workshop, and you ate. I mean, that kind of stuff. That would be awesome to do with a whole bunch of adults, where you just everybody brings like one of their favorite childhood games or one of those things, and that's what you did for the party. You open gifts and you just played with toys all day.
Sounds awesome. Don't invite me.
No, I know you won't.
Yeah.
No, I would get you a deck of cards and say for
There you go.
solitaire only on it,
Yeah.
and there you go.
Yeah. Thanks for thinking of me. Appreciate
Mhm.
it.
Of course, the most
So-
thoughtful gift.
Yes. So we've got quite an action-packed episode here for folks that listening here. We're going to be talking about stoicism, and we're going to be talking about looking specifically at Epictetus. You have to understand, Jason thinks this is a dirty word.
You cannot say Epictetus and not think of something else. That's just so not right. And you keep making me say it over and over again.
So we're going to be looking at some of the writing from Epictetus. I think it's really interesting. The reason why I got this idea to do an episode around this is because we've always talked about having values and principles. And so I thought, well, let's look at some philosophy, particularly stoicism. We'll read some of the passages. I'll read some of the little clips or tidbits from Epictetus's Enchiridion, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see what that's like. For those that have not read the Enchiridion, I would highly encourage anybody to read it. It's Greek word. It essentially means the manual. So it's essentially a manual for life, a handbook for living life. And so we're gonna dive into that. We're gonna talk about some of these passages from Epictetus and kick them around a little bit, see what happens there. But before we do that, I have a couple of news articles that I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
So I think you will get a kick out of some of this. So I don't know if you've been keeping up with the wrestling scene, and I don't mean the WWE. I'm literally meaning like, Greco-Roman wrestling or whatever from the state of Ohio, like because everybody does, right? Everybody does.
Yeah. I'm in that like absolute what? No.
Yeah. So in Ohio State, so the state of Ohio, I don't mean Ohio State University.
Okay.
The state of Ohio has said that high school wrestlers will be able to wrestle this year. Okay. Amid, the whole COVID pandemic, they said, so you can wrestle, but you cannot shake hands before or after a match. This is true.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to laugh. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is true. So this is from WLWT5 NBC station out of Cincinnati. They were reporting this earlier this week. They said among the new rules for student athletes, Student athletes are permitted to wrestle, but must refrain from handshakes before and after the match. Wrestlers are also required to wear facial coverings off the mat when not actively competing or warming up.
So
you know what wrestling means, right?
yeah, you literally body to body, hands, arms, legs, everything, everywhere, all on top of each other, no
Sweating,
space,
drooling on each other.
spitting, slobbering. I mean, it's real. That it and you're gonna say you can take your face covering, i.e., your mask, off when you're wrestling,
right?
But when you're not, you got to put it back on.
And you can't shake hands.
Right, because God forbid if I just had my hand all over in your armpit and on your shirt and your body and your face and everywhere else, I wouldn't want to touch your hand as well.
Right. Because then I might touch my face.
Oh, God. We're so dumb.
It says here on the article, it says equipment should not be shared. If equipment needs to be shared, OHSAA, this is the regulating body from Ohio State, mandates the proper sanitation between use. Student athletes must also sanitize their hands before and after warm-ups, at all timeouts and period breaks anytime they leave the competition or practice mats. So forget about the fact that you're just going to be sweating out of every pore of your body.
Yeah. Or literally rubbing all over each other.
Right.
And OSHA is actually OSHA, I believe.
OHSAA. No, this is the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Ohio High School Athletic Association.
I stand corrected, because actually OSHA would actually might make some more sense out of all this. So you can't shake hands, and you have to have a mask on when you're on the bench.
Right.
Otherwise, you can slobber and rub all over each other. It's totally fine. You don't have to worry about social distancing. But don't congratulate each other. What can they pat each other on the back?
No. Well, I don't know. It doesn't say anything about patting on the back. It says all those on the team bench also need to observe social distancing of 6 feet.
You have to understand, if you've never participated in, or watched wrestling, the whole idea is actually trying to press your body against the body of your opponent, because any gap of space, even the amount of an inch, will allow your opponent to escape and move and escape. So you literally have to keep them pressed up against you as close as you can all the time. And that means everywhere, head to toe.
Right. Yes.
But you have to be 6 foot apart from your teammates on the bench.
Regardless of the fact that we've been practicing together all week, which means we've been wrestling each other all week in warming up in preparation for a wrestling match.
This actually makes about as much sense as going to prom and butt dancing back to back.
Right. This is just look at us do crazy, stupid stuff for the sake of fake, a faux sense of security.
It's a faux sense of security. It's absolute crap. And I'm sorry. It's so stupid. And anybody out there and everybody out in Ohio knows it. So the ultimate question is, why even bother go through the charade of stupidity? You're not fooling anybody. Nobody's going, oh, well, that makes sense. God forbid it. We don't want to shake hands. Our insides will spontaneously combust.
Yeah. Well, and then there's another procedure here. Another big change comes from officiating. To conclude the end of match procedure, the official may point to the winning wrestler while raising his or her own arm with open hand, having the requisite wristband color, red-green, of the winning wrestler. So rather than lifting their,
their arm,
they lift the arm. Just the official will raise his or her arm and then point to. Have you watched a wrestling match? Those officials are literally on the mat,
right there where the
inches away from the wrestlers.
yeah, they have their nose in the armpits of the
They're
wrestlers
right
to
there.
see
They're
what's
right
going on.
there
It
because
it
they're
is.
looking for illegal holds, biting, those types of things.
Yep.
Looking at, making sure that the shoulders, they have to get down there, see if the shoulders are actually pinned or not. All
Mhm.
this kind of, they're right. The officials are right down in there the entire time. This is
Yep.
just
And literally the I'm not exaggerating. You're talking about movements within a half an inch.
yeah, yeah,
That's seriously about the width of your thumb, less than.
right, right.
So the
Breathing all over
official
each
is
other.
right here, right up in your grill, down here, smelling all your stank too, and he's right there up. I mean, and you're gonna say he's not allowed to touch your
Wrist,
forearm?
right?
Seriously?
Because if you're huffing and puffing down there, breathing out, right? Breathing all
Yeah.
over each other in the official. But heaven forbid if we grab somebody's hand, we'll contract the coronavirus. Because apparently the coronavirus is only contracted through hand touching.
Well, but the referee
No,
only
no, no. Hand touching,
I
just hand.
understand, but even normally,
Right.
the official raises the arm, not the hand.
But it doesn't matter. I touched you with my hand.
Well, yeah, but that's so dumb. Oh my god, it's
Dude,
so
I don't
dumb.
know, man. This
I
is
don't
just
know. God,
stupidity.
idiots.
Okay. How about
I had a good one for you actually with the
uh-huh.
corona thing reminds me just that. I went looking for a CD for a
Mhm,
coworker.
mhm,
Okay. You know the old compact disc if you still know what CDs are. I know
mhm,
you're much
mhm.
more technologically advanced so you didn't know.
At least you didn't say old, but keep going.
That's okay. So I was in I actually stopped by Walmart trying desperately to find a CD because believe it or not it was harder than I thought to find those.
Yeah.
And I had to go up and ask one of the associates. I said, "I'm so sorry, but I'm looking for the CDs. Do you guys still have them?" And he said, "Well, normally we do, but we don't right now because of COVID."
Wait.
And I went, "What? I don't know. Wait, you're going to catch COVID from a CD? I don't understand." And he says, "Well, no, normally we have them out in like the bins and just like the DVDs out in the bins, for $5-10 or whatever." I said, "Well, you've normally got them on the rack too, but okay, I understand what you're talking about." He said, "Well, when those with those big bins, people come and actually, dig through
They
them
dig
and they're
through
dig.
them.
So it's possible for, people touching them and all that to go." I said, "Your whole store is full of stuff on the shelf that people touch
Right. And put back.
and put back.
Right.
Why? What's with it? Why is
Right.
that?" And he goes,
Have you
I said, "That is the dumbest thing I ever heard." "Sir, is there a problem here?" "Yes, your store is dumb."
have you been to the grocery store and watching people pick up, apples? No, I don't want that one. Let me pick up. No, I
Yeah.
don't want that one. Pick up another. I did it today. I was at the grocery store and
Uh-huh.
I wanted an avocado and I picked up an avocado, like kind of squeeze it a little bit.
Squish it.
No,
Yeah.
that's too hard. No, let me get the next avocado.
Yep.
I mean, this is
I
just
I was looking at a pineapple, actually a handful of pineapples. Do you know
uh-huh.
how to check and see if a pineapple's ripe? Do you know?
Well, I've heard a couple of different ways, but
Okay,
I
well, the way I was taught, or the way I know, is on the bottom where the actual button on the bottom under the bottom of the pineapple. You actually smell it. If it
yeah, I've heard that.
smells like a ripe, fresh pineapple, there you go. You can actually smell that. Same with a honeydew or a
A
muskmelon, as
honeydew
my
melon,
dad
yeah.
call it. Same thing.
Cantaloupe,
You
yeah.
smell the button. Um,
I've also seen for pineapple, you pick up the like by the leaves at the top,
mhm.
and if you can pull out, if you can pick it up, and if the weight of the pineapple causes the leaf to pull out, then it's a very, very ripe pineapple.
That sounds like rotten to me.
I don't know. That's what the guy at the grocery store told me. He said if you can easily pluck out the
Uh-huh.
leaf, that means it's ripe and ready for you to
Eat
to
like right
eat.
now, or at
Yeah.
least 2 days ago, because it's probably turning brown on the
Most
inside.
of the time, most of the time you have to buy a pineapple and then let it sit for a week.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So yeah, I testing fruit. Good
Yeah.
call. Yep.
Yeah.
Or God knows what else.
All right. Well, here's something really stupid. So I found this story off of Not the Bee. So if for those who are unaware, the Babylon Bee is a satirical site, but because news is so ridiculous now, they started a separate website called Not the Bee. It's run by the same company and everything, but it's not satirical. They literally they're reporting on actual news stories that
Oh,
are
okay.
just redonkulous. They've been out here now for a couple of months. So I picked up this one, which is actually good. This was a story that was on Twitter, and but the Not the Bee carried it. So the title of this is Google sends 7-year-old warning that his parents are monitoring his account, and way too many people are okay with that. Okay, so what would that look like? So this one guy, and I know him, I used to follow him on Twitter. His name is Robbie Starbuck. And he's well, I don't really know what he does. He's a writer or something, producer. He does stuff in entertainment, I guess. But anyway, he tweeted out that he says our 7-year-old son has to have Google for homeschooling, so naturally we set up parental controls. But look what Google did. They sent my son an email to tell him his privacy is important to them, and telling him, his son, we're supervising his account. So he has a screen capture of the email that Google sent to his 7-year-old son. And in the screen cap, it says, your parent is supervising your account and devices. So the email here says, hi, Liam, your privacy is important to us, and we want to remind you that your parent, Robbie Starbuck, is supervising your Google account and signed in devices with Family Link. There are people that took issue with this.
Yeah, I could see that.
Now, what do you take issue with?
Well, I can understand if I were, let's say I'm a parent and I'm monitoring my child's behavior online. I don't know that I need someone else other than me telling my child that I'm monitoring their behavior online.
Okay, well, that's not what I'm referring to that people have problems with.
Okay, what are you?
Okay.
I'm all ears.
Okay. Robbie Starbuck, let me continue just a little bit more here. Robbie Starbuck actually tweeted out again. He said, I want to clarify that our son knew he had parental controls on his account. Google creeped him by emailing him, and like the smart boy we raised him to be, he told us. Even if he didn't know, though, the bottom line, Google has no place contacting kids separately from parents. So that was Robbie Starbuck's position.
Okay.
But other people felt that this was entirely appropriate and should have been done by Google. This other guy, Julian Andre Claude, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He tweeted back, they, Google, have the right and the duty to inform their users that they are being monitored by a third party. Andrew Watkins replied, of course it's Google's place to tell your child they're being monitored, for the precise reason that you could decide not to tell them. Robbie Starbuck replied, that's not their job. They have no rights over my children. This isn't communist China last time I checked. So people are basically saying, no, Google has the right, your child has the right to know that you're spying on them because you might not tell them that you're monitoring them. He's 7.
Yeah, and there's I think the key. If you were going to try and make that argument about, let's say me, okay? Let's say that I have somebody monitoring my accounts. Do I think Google or whatever platform that I'm searching on should tell me? Sure, I'd like to know, but I'm an adult. Nobody else should be watching. This is a child.
He's 7, and Google knew it was the parent monitoring the 7-year-old. This is insanity.
Yeah. It's we've talked before about the indoctrination of children and turning them into the new generation of fighters that are out there. That's something I've mentioned as far as the war on our culture. But
Leslie Carhart, she replied, she wanted to weigh in on what was happening here. So she tweeted, replying to Robbie Starbuck, This is a rare instance in which I'm very proud of Google. This feature will save lives, as these monitoring services are perpetually misused by domestic abusers. Google doesn't know if you're a helicopter parent or a boyfriend beating his girlfriend if she looks for a shelter. Robbie Starbuck tweeted back to Leslie Carhart and said, I highly doubt an adult would be using second grade Google Classroom. Google is aware that my wife and I are the parents connected through Family Link, and our second grader used Google Classroom. Let's use our brains. We can protect adult victims from abusers and kids from big tech.
Yeah. That was very eloquently said.
And then this other guy, Echo Magpie, that's this person's the Echo Magpie retweet. They retweeted or replied back, quote, parents have every right not to tell their kids, unquote, quoting Robbie Starbuck.
Right.
LMAO, laughing my ass off. There goes your relationship. Honesty is key, dude.
No. Wait, that parents have every right not
to tell their kids. If you wanted to, if you have a 7-year-old in second grade, you have every right to monitor your 7-year-old's Google account.
Yes.
And not tell them.
Yes. I agree with that.
Echo Magpie says, there goes your relationship. Honesty is key. You should be honest with your child.
But he said he was. He knew that.
He did know that. That's
so
why
his son... attention. And you just said that was okay. Now you're going to say that's your fault. You should be... Dude, go away.
These people are insane.
God almighty, man. I have been scared for a long time about the world I'm raising my kids in. But good God, this is getting harder and harder to be optimistic.
Well, let's look at this one here. This one is from Fox News, because everybody's going to tell me that Fox News is not real news, but whatever. You're wrong. San Francisco committee wants to remove Abraham Lincoln's name from high school. Yeah.
Okay.
So remember, it was not too long ago when we were comparing Barack Obama to Abraham Lincoln.
Yes, I remember that.
You remember that?
Yes. Sir.
Yeah. And people were celebrating that Barack Obama was the next Abraham Lincoln.
Correct.
But now Abraham Lincoln is not woke enough, even for Barack Obama.
So why are we looking at removing Abraham Lincoln's name? I'm the freer of the slaves.
Says here, the article says, quote, a San Francisco committee is recommending the removal of former President Abraham Lincoln's name from a high school due to his past treatment of Native Americans. Lincoln High School was one of many that the San Francisco School Names Advisory Committee found to have a problematic title, according to the San Francisco Chronicle. Others included George Washington High School, Herbert Hoover Middle School, and Paul Revere K-8. A variety of criteria could remove historical figures from the list, including being slave owners, known racists or white supremacists, anyone directly involved in colonization, and people connected to human rights or environmental abuses. This is where we are. Lincoln has been touted by many on the left and right, including former President Barack Obama and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who mentioned him during a debate in October. Lincoln famously led the Union's defeat of the Confederacy in the Civil War and signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared slaves in rebellious states to be free. But for Jeffries, the history of Lincoln and Native Americans is complicated, not nearly as well known as that of the Civil War and slavery. He told the Chronicle that, quote, Lincoln, like the presidents before him and most after, did not show through policy or rhetoric that Black lives ever mattered to them outside of human capital and as casualties of wealth building, end quote. Lincoln has come under fire for constructing the Transcontinental Railroad, which affected indigenous lands. He also declined to commute the sentences of 39 Native Americans who were sentenced to hanging. 38 were ultimately hanged in a mass execution after one was granted a last-minute reprieve. Not even liberal Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat of California, has been spared. The committee sought to remove her name from an elementary school with Jeffries alluding to allegations that she flew a Confederate flag at City Hall when she was a mayor. The horror. Quote, on a local level, Dianne Feinstein chose to fly a flag that is the iconography of domestic terrorism, racism, white avarice, and inhumanity towards Black and Indigenous people at the City Hall, end quote, he reportedly said. Quote, she is one of the few living examples on our list, so she still has time to dedicate the rest of her life to the upliftment of Black, First Nations, and other people of color. She hasn't thus far, end quote. So there you have it. Not even far left liberal Dianne Feinstein is woke enough for these people. This is just nonsense. At this point, this is nonsensical. This is just absolutely nonsensical. You can't. At this point, anybody, every single person on the planet will never ever be woke enough because these people will find something in your past that will require you to be canceled.
Yes.
So this
And
is where we're at.
when we were talking about name changes before, I mentioned this. This does not stop. This does not end. There's no placation which is going to satiate the appetite of people who are looking to cancel the history of our country.
Right.
And they will do that one name, one team, one. I even mentioned to you before and you called me ridiculous, and that's okay. I appreciate that because that makes me right later on, which I know you hate. But I said that, there will be a point, maybe not in our generation, but even as young as my kids, when they go to have a child, they'll be handed a list of appropriate and approved names. Anything outside of that, they'll probably have to seek approval to name their child, because those names will have to be either approved or there'll at least be a list of names that they are not allowed. And most likely those will be non-woke names, which will somehow, if we said Abraham, well, that's the name of Abraham Lincoln, and he was not kind to the indigenous persons of this country. So no, you're not allowed to name your child Abraham because that may in some way give homage to Abraham Lincoln. That sounds absurd to you and I right this moment.
Of course.
But I'm telling you, it's not that far from reality.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous, and I think more Americans need to just stand up and say, you know what, stop being dumb. Just stop it. Knock it off. Because it's tiresome, and we can't believe. I can't take any of these people seriously anymore. It's gotten to the point now where as soon as one of these people says, well, we need to get rid of Abraham Lincoln, I don't even want to hear about it. I don't even want to hear what the message is. And in fact, it's now gotten to the point where my first response is, no, we're not going to do that. No, I'm against it. I don't care why. Just on principle alone, just because you're being silly, you've been stupid for so long, and I'm just sick and tired of it. Stop it.
Right.
And that goes against their entire, their entire movement. If you lose people and you consistently lose people because you just are you're looking for anything. And we can't even agree that Abraham Lincoln, who people were saying is like the embodiment of Obama now, or Obama is the embodiment, or was the embodiment of Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
It was just a few years ago, for crying out loud, where that happened. Anyway. Before we get into Epictetus, I want to talk a little bit about Cyberpunk. I know you're not playing the game.
Okay.
But I need to talk about this. So I feel like I have put in so much time into this game, because I have, that I can talk about this with some at least experience. I haven't. It's not like I've only put in 2 hours and I've barely scratched the surface. I am right now sitting at 54.6 hours on Steam.
Okay.
So I've been playing this game. I have been consuming this game.
Yes,
I have been everywhere in the world. I'm like, I have done so much in this game. I love this game so much. but it's getting beaten up in the media, rightfully so. I mean, the PS4 and the Xbox versions are absolutely pooptastic, from what I understand. You have to have a pretty solid rig to run it on PC. So if you don't have a decent rig, you're not playing the game. And if you have a PS4 and Xbox, it's practically unplayable. And so it got pulled from the PS4 or PlayStation's online store. You can't buy it through there. I think Microsoft pulled it from the Xbox store too, which is really sad. It's a shame because the game uh, is really good. I think definitely the PS4 and the Xbox versions should have been given more time to cook. I think they should have just released the PC version right now. But anyway, it is what it is. But some of the things that I think or you look like you have a question. What's up?
No, I'm overwhelmingly confussed. I know Cyberpunk came out. It was highly anticipated. I saw it on the shelf at Best Buy and Walmart and some of those other places.
Yeah.
It's definitely out there. And so when you say it's unplayable and then they pulled it, I'm going, okay, well, then there must be some sort of very serious issue. And I've heard zero about it other than everybody's like two,
The
both feet and a couple hands into it.
Yeah, so and again, I've been playing it on PC, so I don't know about the other than what I've read about the game on PS4 and Xbox. But apparently, on PS4 and Xbox, what they did was CD Projekt Red was actually making the game for the upcoming next generation consoles, the PS5 and whatever the Xbox version is. And they didn't tune it well enough. They didn't spend a lot of time with the current version of Xbox and PlayStation. And so there's really low frame rate issues. Textures don't load in, all kinds of graphical issues, crashing. I was reading a thing where on PS4 and I think on even on the Xbox, most people couldn't even play the game for more than like a minute or two before it was crashing the hardware and they would have to reboot. So just it's literal. I'm not joking when I say it is literally an absolute disaster on consoles. Microsoft and Sony are now offering refunds to anybody who purchased it through their online stores if they want a refund back. So it's bad. It
Wow.
really is bad on the PS4 and the Xbox. But the game, hopefully, CD Projekt Red can get it all stable on all the different platforms because it really is a good game. So some of the things that I think that I just wanted to mention really quick, some of the pros for the game. The storylines are awesome. Um, the storylines, the scope of the world building is really awesome, and in there. Now I read some articles that said, well, the world building isn't all that great. They do bring up some interesting points when they talk about it. What I'm referring to is the textures of the world feel really gritty. I'm going to pause for a second there. Hopefully I'll catch back up. I saw something with my internet connection going unstable. But now I'm back. Um, the scope of the world is really gritty. The world building I think is really good. There are like a lot of these little, if you go walk around the environments and you go into rooms, for example, you'll see the same books or the same posters on walls. People were complaining about
Uh-huh.
that. I don't really think that that's big of a deal. Yes, I can see how you feel like that's a little shallow, but you're not going to get developers to spend, thousands of hours just creating little bits and doodads.
Well, but that's in every game. I'm
That's in
sorry.
every game.
I
That happens
that's
everywhere.
get over that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that happens everywhere. The voice acting is really good.
Okay.
All of the characters, the character developments are really good, and as I said, the storylines are really good. I love just being in the world and seeing and like there are little things that will be happening where I'll be driving to one mission and I pull over and I stop and I see something happening on the side of the road, and that leads me down this rabbit hole of it what turned out to be just where or what I thought was like a little crime in progress. All of a sudden that explodes into like a little storyline, tangent that has nothing to do with the main storyline. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, which is really, really good. Um, some of the cons of the game, there are a few things that really sort of get to me after a while. For example, my character, so I created a dude character,
Mhm.
and he's got really heavy floppy feet.
Oh, okay.
So when you're walking, you can hear the footsteps, your own footsteps when you're walking through the world.
Uh-huh.
Well, it sounds like his feet are like really large, like he's got these flippers for feet and he's just like slapping the cement pavement whenever he walks. And it doesn't matter if he's wearing boots or loafers or sneakers or anything. It's the same sound. So they used the same sound for his footsteps. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you have played with the sound a little bit? Second of all, did you have to make it so freaking loud? It's a first
Okay.
person. You're walking all over the place and everywhere you go. It's not like this is a fantasy game where you're running on grass and in
Uh-huh,
the
uh-huh.
forest. You're literally running on concrete 90% of the time because it's in a
Right.
city. And so your feet are just flopping all over the place and you're constantly hearing it and it gets annoying. Um,
Okay. I mean, I can understand that repetitive sound all the
yeah.
time can eat at you. I get it, but all right. That's just
There,
a very odd and
it's a
unique
weird
complaint for a
it's a
game.
weird thing. Yeah, it's a weird thing. Another thing that really annoys me, it started to annoy me, is the map. So like many games, you hit a key and it brings the map up. In this case, you hit M, boop, and your map comes up. There's a lot of stuff happening on the map. There are a lot of icons, and there's a learning curve to figure out what all these icons mean and to learn how to read the map. Okay, great. That's fine. Within a couple of hours, I got it. But what annoys me is the fact that I hit M, brings up the map, but if you hit M again, it doesn't close the map. It changes the view from a two-dimensional to a three-dimensional map.
Mhm.
I never use the three-dimensional map. I just want to close the freaking map. In order to close the map, you can, and if you just hit the M, it just toggles back and forth, 2D, 3D, 2D, 3D. So you have to hit M to open the map, then you have to hit escape, but escape doesn't close the map. Escape takes you to this main portal for your character, and then you have to hit escape again. So which means if I want to close the map, I have to hit escape twice. Doesn't seem like that big of a
No.
deal,
No,
but it starts to get really annoying.
so I told you I'm playing Control.
Yeah.
The game Control. Well,
Yeah.
in most games, when you bring up the map, what does
Yeah.
that do? Pause the game.
Pauses the game. Not in
Not in
Control.
Control. You look at the map and you can have something literally come up behind you and eat your face off
Yes.
while you're trying to look around at this teeny map. Where the frig am I supposed to be going?
Yeah.
Well, and in every other menu ever, when you open a menu, the back button, or on like the Xbox controller, is B.
B.
That's back. That goes,
Yeah.
okay, out of there, exit, last screen, close window, whatever you want to call it. Not in Control because
No.
it doesn't pause the game. Well, B is your evade. You know how many cliffs I have jumped off of trying to close the stupid map? A lot. And the loading screen when you die takes a really long time. I mean, it is one of those games that like, oh, it's loading. All right, I'm going to go make a snack and go to the bathroom and put on some socks because my feet are getting cold. I'll come back and I'll still wait.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, okay, go ahead. Map issues.
Another thing that I don't like about the game is the armor. So I'm one of these kind of players where I really like to
Number crunch.
no, well, I do like to number crunch, but I also like to play with the aesthetics of my characters. And so I created, so the background of my character I created, I'm a corporate guy. They call him a corpo, right? So my guy has a background of a corporate dude, and I really envisioned running around the world, dressed in a
Suit and
suit,
tie.
with suit,
You're playing
tie,
the agent
fedora,
from the
right? Like,
Matrix. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to be that kind of character. And you certainly can, but every little thing in the game that you can wear is technically armor. So,
Mhm.
I'm running around in like a tank top because it has really good armor on it, right? And the dress shirts that I find don't, they're not as good. But the problem then becomes you can't customize your look. So I would rather it be where you have like mods. Well, they do have mods, but all of the armor is based on the clothing that you're wearing. So you have t-shirts that are like really awesome, give you really high armor, and then you can do like these little mod slots and you can improve the armor or improve your carrying capacity, whatever. But you get new armor, you get new items all the freaking time,
Mm-hmm.
that you end up looking like a freaking hobo. It looks like you walked into a Kohl's exploded, and you dressed yourself with your eyes closed. Um, and
You're the Goodwill gangbanger.
yeah, I mean, if I truly wanted to number crunch, my guy would be running around in a hot pink mini skirt right now, because that's the best armor that I found for my legs. But I'm like, my guy's not wearing a freaking
I'm not doing that.
mini
I'm
skirt.
not doing that. Yeah.
Right. So I would have much preferred if you could just like go, and even if just all of the wearable pieces were just cosmetic, and
Uh-huh.
then you slot mods into your character slot to increase your armor, or just handle the armor with your cyberware. You are it's cyberpunk, for crying out loud. You have all these implants and crap in you, you know. So they should have made the armor more cyberware. That would have been cool too. I actually stopped caring about armor because I finally got my character in a way that I'm like, okay, he looks cool, so I'm gonna stop dealing with his armor. And now I don't even mess with the armor. And I've been passing over armor pieces because I don't want to change his look.
Yeah.
I think that takes away, some of the from some of the game and the min maxing and all that kind of stuff. And that's a bit unfortunate.
Well, in most of those games, you can get lost in the minutia of doing all that kind of stuff anyway. And I
Yeah.
and I think a lot of those games are trying to be high reaching to appeal to as many people in some of their niche stuff. Is there a crafting system in the game?
There is a crafting system. I've only tinkered with it just a little bit.
Like, I know you're not a crafter type.
No, I'm not really a
I
crafter type.
I have a buddy like that, and so and probably he would be able to tell you after about 10 minutes, like, oh yeah, I just crafted a whole business suit
Yeah,
tuxedo looking thing. I look all James Bonds-ish, and it's got armor better than anything else out there because I did this, that, and the other thing, and you have to
yeah.
find this.
Well, and there are weird things too. Like, so I mentioned you have the cyberware, so you can do all these like technical implants, and stuff like that. Very similar to Deus Ex, right?
Hmm.
Um, but one of the things that's kind of annoying is I go to these Ripper docs to get new implants, and there's a section on your character sheet. It's got 3 slots, so you can put 3 pieces of cyberware in there. And it's for skin. Um, so I was able to buy an implant that is basically subdermal, and it gives me like 200 or 400 armor value. And I'm like, awesome. I got all this armor from my cyberware, which is great. So I don't have to worry as much about the stupid
Right.
clothes that I'm wearing. But there are 2 other slots. You can only have 1 slot with armor.
Yeah.
All of the Ripper docs that I go to, they sell other pieces of armor, so but you can only have 1 slotted armor.
Yep.
So it's like I have these 2 other slots that are completely and totally useless. Last night I found, because there's nothing to find for them. I'm like, well, where the hell do I get the other 2 pieces for my skin? I did find one that made me immune, that I could buy and slot in there, that would make me immune to electrical damage. But I just recently bought a skill that made me immune to electrical damage. So I'm like, well, now I don't need that. So
Yeah.
um it's a little there are these little pieces like that I think are a bit odd. But I am getting better at driving, but only driving motorcycles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because it sounds like the world is fairly massive and driving is a big part in order for you to be able to get around. And
Yeah.
for someone like you, that could be almost enough for you to go to heck with it. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to run from here across God's green creation
So big.
and listening to my floppy feet
Yeah.
the whole way.
Well, and the combat feels really good, but the thing is my character, the way I design my character, I hardly ever go into combat. So all I carry now is 1 pistol, and I very rarely actually use the pistol because I'm essentially a street mage, which is kind of awesome. I go into these missions and I just like, I quick hack everybody. It's called quick hacking. and I can shock them, I can burn them, I can do all this kind of stuff to them. And most of the time, what's even better is when I go into these locations, and a lot of locations have them. These areas have like CCTV,
Hmm.
and so I just like find a little hiding place, and I just tap into their CCTV network, and I just look at all of the bad dudes, and I just like torch them and shock them and get rid of them all. And then I disconnect and I just stroll right on in and walk through, and there's nobody left. so so I'm literally like amazed. Like
Yeah.
I don't have as much armor as I could. I don't, I'm kind of weak in that capacity. I'm certainly not a strong character. My strength's only 3, which is starting level. But I maxed out like intelligence, and I maxed out, well, put a lot of stuff in technical stuff so I can pick locks and all kinds of crazy
Yeah.
stuff. But I'm already thinking about playing it a second time.
Already.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Making a
Yeah.
completely different character. Stealthy ninja dude with like a sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cyber Ninja.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely worth playing. The only other downside that people might be thinking about is this game does nothing new. So there's I definitely thought that that the hacking in what was that one game that I was playing? What was it? Something
Watch Dogs.
Dogs, Watch Dogs. That the hacking in Watch Dogs was more interesting. Even the hacking in Deus Ex to a certain degree is a bit more interesting than in this game, which is kind of a bummer,
Mhm.
given that it's cyberpunk. Um, but it doesn't do anything. There's nothing new here. If you've played open world games like Watch Dogs or The Witcher or GTA, it's it's that same genre.
Mhm.
But one thing that I wanted to mention to you is it's starting. The game is starting to, well, it's starting to get a lot of critics from the woke crowd
Okay.
because they don't like how this game is very misogynist.
I figured something like that would be coming up.
Well, the game drips sweat, just
Yes,
drips with sex.
yes, absolutely. You mentioned that.
So there are people that don't like that, but there are also, I read this other article that complained about the cultural appropriation of Asian culture. Um,
Okay.
and they, here's the problem. We have, a lot of these writers in games industry, they're young. They went to high school in the mid 90s, or they graduated in the early 2000s, and now they're writing for these different websites, and they don't understand why Cyberpunk even has Asian references in it. When
Oh,
Cyberpunk,
okay.
so when
I'm like,
Cyberpunk
yeah, it
as
should.
well, when Cyberpunk was created back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was, it was a reflection of what was happening in the West Coast of the United States, where Japan and China were buying up a lot of land.
Right.
And there was a sense during the 80s that the Japanese were going to come, and they were just going to put their companies here,
Hmm.
move a lot of their people here, and just sort of take over our capitalistic environment. There was a lot of concern
Right.
about that. We
Hmm.
had a lot of companies who were American companies who were being bought by Japanese corporations.
Hmm.
And what these young writers don't realize is that's how it, when you're creating cyberpunk and you're imagining something into the future, there was a lot of talk about Japanese and Chinese companies taking over the United States. So it's a natural evolution to just take that thread and expand on it. And
Yeah.
now you see, boom, there's Japantown and little China explosion and stuff like that.
Well, and if you look at the advancement of technology, even right now, Japan has and still does lead the nation in the advancement of robotics and things like that.
Sure, sure.
The development of AI. I mean, they've actually instituted a lot of AI programs and AI platforms out there that we're just barely tapping on, and of course, there's a lot of concerns about that. But if you just take that as the natural progression, the Japanese and the even to an extent part of the Chinese culture actually leads in that regard, so that's a natural progression. I
Yeah,
don't
it's an
understand.
right. And so they're trying to claim that it's racist and all this kind of stuff. And I just think that that's
Oh,
just
whatever,
ridiculous.
shut up.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's my take on Cyberpunk. I think by the next time we talk, I will have finished it because I'm really close to being done with the game.
Well, all right.
Um,
Well, that's
All right,
taken us through the first hour. So
let's talk about Epictetus.
Epictetus. Now, and I did say when you first talked to me about this, I thought
Mhm.
this is actually a really cool concept and a really interesting idea, and something I think we might want to consider taking a few of these passages and doing them over if a couple episodes. I mean, who knows,
Sure.
this might take us into two, maybe even three different episodes where we actually break some of these conceptual ideas down and relate them to modern life. So yeah, just setting the stage for that now, because that I think that's very possible. But
Yeah, and one of the things that I like in terms of philosophy, I've read a number of philosophers and flirted with different types of philosophies, but I've always, or I shouldn't say always, I guess in recent years, I've found a deeper connection with Stoicism, um, and for me, Stoicism, I see that as as really the bedrock of minimalism. And a few years ago, I know a lot of people who know me know that I embraced minimalism, and I don't like, I got rid of just a ton of stuff. Essentially all of the stuff that you see behind me is pretty much all the stuff that I own. And then I own clothes, and so I switched, I got rid of just so many things. And then as I started to look more into stoicism, I really felt that there was a sort of a connection, or at least a linkage there between minimalism and stoicism. And I felt that the two were essentially saying a lot of the same stuff. So for me as a minimalist, also being a like a stoic, I they kind of go hand in hand. So
okay,
all right. So let's take a few of these passages and let's talk about
yeah, let's go.
them. So I like this first. So this first one that I have here is interesting. It says here, quote, "Remember then that if you think the things which are by nature slavish to be free, and the things which are in the power of others to be your own, you will be hindered. You will lament. You will be disturbed. You will blame both gods and men. But if you think that only which is your own to be your own, and if you think that what is another's, as it really is, belongs to another, no man will ever compel you. No man will hinder you. You will never blame any man. You will accuse no man. You will do nothing involuntarily. No man will harm you. You will have no enemy, for you will not suffer any harm."
Hmm.
You look like you just hit a bong.
No, no, there was I was actually going to start writing some things down. And for all of you out there, keep in mind, I have no idea. I've never read this book, and I have no idea what a Dr. Ramirez is going to be revealing as we go through all this. So I was actually going to write this down so I could actually pick it apart, but um, I stopped after about four words.
So let me kind of set the stage with this a little bit, right?
Mhm.
This is something that minimalism talks about. If you read people that are have there are a lot of blogs about minimalism. People have written books on minimalism, but the idea is, don't compare yourself to somebody else, and
Mhm.
don't wish for, we live in a society where we're always comparing ourselves to our neighbors, right? Keeping up with the Joneses. You've heard that
Yep.
um,
Yep.
that comment or that adage many, many times. And people will go into debt just to keep up with what their neighbors are like, or people will lament if they go into a neighbor's house and they live in a big, a big fancy, house.
Right.
They might feel like that's, oh, they're better than me, or they might feel a sense of jealousy, or they haven't accomplished much, which is why I love minimalism, because it's very focused. It's like, no, I don't want that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I don't want that. And here Epictetus is saying, don't worry about what other people have.
Mhm.
Only focus on what you own. And if you don't focus on what other people have, you're not going to be in those weird situations where you're lamenting over not having them.
Yeah, it really does start to tear apart the argument for the um the division between the haves and the have not
Right.
class of society. But as you were reading this, I'm sorry, some of the things I think at face value, this is talking about, I guess possessions, objectivity, et cetera, et cetera. But as I'm listening to you talk about it, I'm hearing more about the haves that I do have, which actually means something. And it's not about, the junk that's around me in my, garage here in my blue collar garage, but more of the haves that I have, that it's in my house. That's
Right.
my family, and the home that I have that allows me to, not just that it's a nice house, but that I've provided shelter for me and my family.
Hmm.
And looking at the um I guess more of the esoteric value rather than the intrinsic value
Right.
of the possessions that I do have.
Right. Good call. Well, let's
So,
go on to another one that's not so lengthy, because I think this one will be really interesting. It's really
okay.
short.
Okay.
This passage says, "The opinion about death, that it is terrible, is the terrible thing."
That's cool.
Isn't that cool?
That's very cool.
So, the idea is the idea here, what Epictetus and a lot of the Stoics like Marcus Aurelius talk about is, death is just a part of life.
Mhm.
And when somebody dies, if you lose a loved one, you're not you're not lamenting or crying about the death itself. You're lamenting and crying over your opinion of what death is.
Now,
So
wait. Say that
Mhm.
again, because now I think you lost me. I actually thought I knew what he meant, but apparently, if you have deeper insight, I'm lost.
No,
Do
it's
that one
it's
more time.
so if you lose, let's say you lose a loved one,
Got it?
okay? We live in a world where we know everybody's going to die.
Yes.
Nobody on earth will live forever.
Yep. Nobody makes it
We
out of
know
this
that.
life alive.
Right. So we know everybody is going to die. So what the Stoics teach us is they say, well, if you know everybody's going to die, then you have to expect that your loved ones, the people you care about, are going to die.
Mhm.
And so therefore it's not the death itself that is painful. It is your viewpoint of death that is what causes you pain. So the heartache is not the person dying. The heartache is actually your viewpoint of that death.
So, okay. Now, if I were to go through life saying that the saddest thing in the world is the fact that everybody dies, that would be terrible because, well, we couldn't have everybody still alive. That's horrible to think about. But to say that I'm not able to mourn the death of a loved one, I don't think that's what you're intending to say, but that's almost what it seems like you are sounding like. Um,
That's a lot of what the Stoics actually talk about. In fact, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and others wrote about how you should imagine the worst things that can happen to you and or around you, so that when those things do actually happen to you, they don't actually cause you any harm anymore. And that's a very difficult thing to grasp. They actually talk about, yes, you should, in other words, you should reflect on your wife dying, for example, or your children dying. You should actually reflect, because then if it happens, you are in a much more stronger position to handle it or should that reality come to be about.
wow. Well,
But
I'm not
that's
a stoic. So, so
and so what they talk about though is that by doing that, by reflecting on that,
Mhm.
it's not that you live your life in sadness. Okay. It's you reflect on that so that you can learn how to deal with those emotions now, rather than when they hit you. They don't hit you like a freight train. So you're able to deal with those emotions because you've imagined it, you've reflected on friends and loved ones having passed.
Mhm.
And so then you're able to free yourself from that. So should their death come, yes, it's going to be painful. The Stoics are not saying, you're going to be fine, you're going to have no pain, you're not going to lament. They just say reflect on it so that it doesn't consume you when it happens, because they also recognize that people can suffer the death of a loved one and can go off on the deep end.
Oh, absolutely. And that I 100% absolutely agree with. I know people who have been consumed, literally eaten alive, by the death of a loved one, and it's terrible to see happen. And I've talked to you, God, I don't even know how many times about the passing of loved ones in my life.
Mhm.
I don't believe that any of those have consumed me, even when they happened. They didn't, at least I don't think, consumed me. But I mourn them. Then I still mourn them to a point. But to think that I don't fear death. I don't fear death in my life. I don't necessarily fear death in the life of the loved ones around me. I think my view on that for, let's say, my children is probably a little bit harder for me to grasp, having to deal with that because of, well, they're my kids. They're supposed to have to worry about what happens when I die. That's the rule. Um yeah, I don't, no parent should have to bury their child. I can't
I
I can't think of that. But
so go ahead.
no, but death itself shouldn't be necessarily feared. It should be something that we should protect ourselves from, to a point of, not warranting unnecessarily termination of ourselves or the people we care about. I'm going to say, I don't let my kids go play in traffic, but I'm not going to refuse to leave my house, because what could happen, and allow the fear of death to actually overtake our life.
Well, and that's what they say, right? That's what the Stoics are talking about. If you reflect on death, then death won't consume you. There are people right now all over our country who are terrified of COVID, for
Yes.
example. They're terrified of it. They are legitimately terrified. They get mad at their family members if they step outside their house. We have people that are willingly secluding themselves from friends and family for holidays because they are legitimately terrified over it. And the Stoics say, reflect on it, and deal with those. Here's the difference. If you have a loved one and the loved one has lived a life, but then they get sick,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what age. If you have a loved one that gets sick, and especially that's a terminal illness, then you have gone through mourning stages while that person is still alive. And so when that person eventually passes, the moment of their death is really more of a release. Yes, there's still a bit of sadness, but you've already gone through the emotional aspects of it. If you were to take that and do that now for people that you know who are not sick, and you were to reflect on them as being, the idea here is you extrapolate that, and don't look at their life or death as only once they're sick, but look at it while they're healthy. And if something were to happen to them, would you be sad? Yes, you're going to be heartfelt and all of that. But then when they do, if something bad were to happen to them, you've already kind of gone through that and prepared yourself for that. So that's what the Stoics are really talking about here in terms of death. It is the opinion of that death. It is your opinion of what death means that causes you. Because a thing about Stoicism is nothing in this world is really designed to hurt you. I'm not talking about, being tortured or things like that. I'm just
Mhm.
talking about the way we generally live our life day to day, the average person around the world, that things do not actually affect you. It is your opinion of those things that affect you. So if people are mean to you, or if people talk bad behind your back, right? It's your opinion of what all of that means that causes you harm. It's not
Sure.
necessarily them talking bad about you. Does that
Sure.
make sense?
No, and that I can actually wrap my head around pretty easy. Um, there, I know a lot of people that are very consumed in their daily lives with what they think other people are saying, or what other people's opinion are of them, or oh, I I heard somebody was saying this about you. Well, if you're the kind of person that goes, "Oh my God, why?" or "How dare they?" and that becomes all you can think about, well, yeah, they've got a lot of power over you in that regard. I know for someone like me, especially me, I heard somebody saying blah 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 about you. Oh yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
They said you're an asshole. They were probably right. I
Yeah.
don't know. What was it about in particular? I was just curious. Oh yeah, I did that. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, but that alleviates the not only the burden of you to have to now internalize that external situation and make it a problem that you have to then deal with. So that's very liberating in that regard, but it completely removes any kind of control that other people may have over you and how to direct your day-to-day involvement. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people in different places I work, they get consumed in that so quick, and they get lost in what they're supposed to be doing. um I don't worry about what people, anybody who's known me for most of my life knows I really don't give a crap what most people think about me. It's very liberating in that
Well, yeah,
regard.
you don't. And I think there's a reason why most people do. I think there's a
Okay.
reason why most people do care about what other people think. And I look at how we evolved as animals. We evolved as social animals. We can't do everything by ourselves. We need to rely. We need to actually be able to interact in groups so that we can survive.
Mhm.
And the only way that we can gauge whether or not we are useful to the group or the group is willing to support us is through our own self-esteem.
Mhm.
In other words, gauging the like, do other people like me, right?
Mhm.
If other people like me, then then now I have a sense of attachment in the group, or I have a sense of value and worth in the group, and I can interact in the group, and I'll be able to get the things that I need in the group. For example, if you're part of a company, you want everybody to at least like you and not talk crap about you, right? And if they do, then you start to feel, well, my self-worth is not good for this company, and maybe I need to leave.
Mhm.
And that's a natural, that's a natural reaction in those kinds of things. Now, there's a point. I think there's a healthy level there. Our self-esteem can be a healthy barometer to
Sure.
help us gauge our influence within the group so that we can survive.
Sure.
But too many people, I think, fall off the wagon, and they allow that self-esteem meter to really control their lives. And if anybody says anything that's slightly perceived as negative, it's, oh my god, you hate me,
Mhm.
right? And that's not
Well,
a healthy place to be.
no, and I believe me, I think everybody is able to function in society a lot better if they're generally liked by other people, if they can cohabitate and converse with each other. I don't think anybody intentionally wants to be, and myself included, wants to be mean or hurt other people's feelings intentionally. And I think there is a middle ground where we can say, I don't want to intentionally hurt anyone's feelings. If I unintentionally did that, I'm sorry. If that's not good enough and you want recompense for that, well then forget it. I mean, because ultimately there's only so much of that which is under my control. And I recognize that too. I can't control how you feel. I have some responsibility for how much of that I actually add or take away from, but only so much. Um, so yes, I think it's good to actually get along with the people you work with. You don't have to be intentionally antagonistic. Um, and I think actually that makes you a stronger person. And really, in the end, I think those stronger people who are like that end up getting along with most everybody else anyway because they're genuine and they're honest, and people latch on to that because nobody likes fake people. Nobody likes that.
I think most people say they don't like that, but I think in some cases people don't want to see other people be real.
Oh, no,
In
no, no,
some
there's
instances.
I will agree with that, but I'll make this fair point.
Mhm.
I think people like being around people who are honest, upright, and real, but they hate brutal honesty. Nobody likes brutal honesty.
Well, and that's why I say I don't. And I think even if you were to differentiate between honesty and brutal honesty, I think there are a lot of people that still don't even want to deal with the honesty. They want to deal with honesty as long as you're not being negatively honest about them. If you can be honest about the things that are around them or in the environment around them, they're thumbs up. They're like, that's great. But we don't like to have, most people, the vast majority of people do not like to have any sort of magnifying glass put on them by somebody else, even if it's done in a way that is very minimalist and in a loving way,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
um we tend to get offended by that. So I think
Sure.
most people want honesty, but they want honesty with caveats.
Yes. I'll take honesty, but I still need you to prop me way up from where I was.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
and I've had that same situation where somebody says, "Well, let me you didn't seem to agree with me on this, so let me explain." And they go into a very long diatribe, and then say, and it's always the, "So you understand?" "Yes, yes, I understand." "You do, you understand?" "Absolutely understand." "So you agree?" "No, I do not."
Yeah.
"No, I don't agree." "Well,
Right,
what do you mean? You just said you understand." "Yes, I understand. I
right.
understand what you are saying. I understand the points that you are making. I understand why you feel that your argument is sound. But I do not agree with you." And you want to see somebody literally implode. You can watch their face and head just go, and they
Yeah,
just don't know what to do with themselves. Is uh, say that, yes, I understand, but I don't agree.
right. Good
And
stuff.
I'm just not being contrarian saying, no, I think your idea is stupid. That's just offensive.
Right. That's just,
Um,
yeah, that's being a
yeah,
jerk.
that's just
Yeah.
poke the bear, poke you. That's just being intentionally antagonistic. I can do that sometimes too. But no, there's, and you've heard me say this many a times. I can understand it, but I don't have to agree with it. And I'm actually really latching on to that idea more and more and more because it allows me. You actually talked about this last week about challenging your own biases.
Mhm.
Um, if you can be steadfast in a viewpoint, but that doesn't mean you should close yourself off to the viewpoints of others. So if nothing else, that's a way for me to compartmentalize my own ideas and say, okay, well, this is my thoughts on this, but let's explore what it is you're talking about. And if at the end I can understand the argument and the exploration in that mindset, if it still does not outweigh what we've already discussed or the mindset that I've already had, then I can understand where you're at, and I do not agree with you. Or perhaps I understand, and maybe you're right. I do agree. But if you can allow yourself to actually, I guess, take a step outside of your own ideas and follow along, I think that can open you up to some new possibilities.
I think it can too, but I think for people to do that, they really have to be very aware of confirmation bias. I think confirmation
Hmm.
bias is one of the most brutal forms of bias that people adhere to, and we all adhere to it.
And it's destructive.
It's
It
very
can be very
destructive.
destructive.
The problem with confirmation bias is the rule of one. There's the rule of one for confirmation bias, and that is, if you say something to me, okay, and I have to stop and think, do I should I believe what you believe?
Hmm.
If I quickly answer that and say, yes, I should believe that. And if somebody were to ask me, well, why do I agree with Jason on that? All it takes is one reason. All I need to find is one reason that locks me in and proves that I should believe you. If, however, you say something and I'm like, should I believe that? No, I shouldn't believe that.
Okay.
Then all it takes for me to tell you why I shouldn't believe that, again, is one thing. If I can find one thing that tells me I should not believe you, then I won't do it. Then I won't believe that. Most people operate that way. So what I challenge people on is, I say, try to do at least three things. Because you have to
Hmm.
work to find one in a lot of situations. You have to work to find one. If you got to do a lot of work to find one, imagine how much work you have to do to find three things.
Hmm.
And so confirmation bias, it can be we can be enslaved to it, because all I need, if my intuition says I shouldn't believe that, I'm not going to believe that, then all
Hmm.
it takes for me to be very to fall into my convictions and say, no, I don't need to believe it, is just one item. Boom, I'm done, and I don't have to believe it.
So I'm familiar with the concept of confirmation bias from
Mm-hmm.
psychology. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
that quite a bit. I also, as far as a biblical sense, when you talk about Three, always look for three examples. Even in the Bible, it says, verify everything I have said in the eyes of three witnesses. And that's important. But for the sake of everyone out there, all of the people in our listening audience, can we do an example of what you're talking about so I think they can understand?
Sure. Let's use a very controversial idea.
Okay.
Okay, to try to illustrate it. And I'm not going to use abortion because we used that in one
Yeah, let's not
before.
do that.
So we won't use that one. But let's use capital punishment.
Oh, okay, good. Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's use capital punishment. If you believe that yes, we should put down the worst people in our society, we should kill them.
Mhm.
Okay. If you believe that, if I say yes, we should kill the hardened criminals, we should kill those people that are the most despicable, that have committed the most atrocious crimes in our society. Okay. Um, Now you can all you need to have, if your intuition, and remember, I'm talking about intuition right off the bat, okay?
Right,
Because
right,
a
right.
lot of what we say or things that happen around us in our society, our intuition tends to fire first, and
Hmm.
our intuition will say either yes, I'm for that, or no, I'm against it.
Right.
So if our intuition fires first and says yes, I agree with capital punishment, then all you really need is one thing. Most people just need one example of why to help them confirm their bias that capital punishment is okay.
Yeah. Most intellectual decisions happen with under 2 seconds.
Right. So if
Initially.
I say
So
capital punishment should be a thing, and you say I agree, and then if I say, well, why?
okay, I agree.
Right. Then I say, well, why do you agree with that?
Well, I look at people who have committed murder for murder's sake and mass shootings. The person who committed the crimes of the mass shooting in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
There is no remorse for that person. There's no saving him. And look at the lives he's taken. Um, he should he should be put to death for that.
Okay. And that's a valid, and for a person, they could use that as a valid argument
Sure, I'm trying.
that now solidifies themselves. So now what they've done is they agreed with intuition, and
Yep.
now they're using their rational mind to come up with evidence that supports that intuition judgment.
Yes.
Okay. And so even if I were to lob at you all of these reasons why it's bad,
Hmm.
all of these reasons to be against it, you've got that one
I still
lifeline.
can hang on to
You
that
can hang on to
forever.
that forever
Yep.
and never change your mind.
Sure.
It also works the other way too.
Mhm.
If I say, capital punishment, and if your gut
I
says
say no way. We should be
no,
abolished
it
completely. No
it should be
capital punishment.
abolished,
Hmm.
then all you need to rationalize that, if I try to challenge you, is one thing. And if you just say, well, killing is evil, killing is bad, right?
Hmm.
I believe in the Bible. I believe in
Yep.
the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments say, do thou shalt not kill. Therefore, that's it.
That's it right
No
there.
matter what anybody will say to try to change my mind will work, because I will always hinge on that one reason. Nope.
Hmm.
The Bible tells me thou shalt not kill. Therefore, it doesn't matter what you can say. I'm not going to change my mind.
Okay. So then you talked about actually trying to come up with three solid, rational reasons to support that reaction. Now, what does that do for the average person? Because
Well,
remember,
sure.
if I still going to hold on to that, I can hold on to it forever, and I just have that one thing. So,
Yeah.
what does having three do for you, me, and everyone else?
Well, I think having if you can do the work to come up with three different things, and I don't mean just rephrasing that one in a different light,
Sure,
right? But
and not
coming up
three examples of the same.
right,
Right.
not three examples of the same thing,
Hmm.
okay? But if you do the hard work to come up with three items, I think it puts you in a better position. Not only if you can come up with three different items, it forces you to think about that topic a little bit more. Okay. It forces you to look at it from a couple of different angles to see if it's okay. But I would also challenge you to try to come up with three opposing viewpoints as well
Yeah.
while you're thinking about it. Because you might be surprised what you find in some of those other options.
Hmm.
Um, and if you can do that, I think then it starts placing you on a path of getting away from the tribalism that tends to take place in our politics, and stop thinking about in terms of, well, my side is is for or against capital punishment, or for or against abortion, or for or against taxation, whatever you want to put on that. You start getting away from the tribalism, and you start really thinking about, what are the pros and cons of it, and if I can at least get three on either side, you're at least starting to walk a path where you're opening your mind to more possibilities, and where you're starting to think about it. And here's the other thing: if you come up with multiple reasons, even if you come up with reasons against, and you still adjust, you still look at those and go, here, these are three solid good reasons against it, but you know what, I discard these, and then come up with a reason why you discard them. Your arguments are going to get stronger and stronger in terms of what you believe, and actually why you should think you should believe it,
Yep.
rather than just getting, and you get away from the intuition, and you start getting more and more into rationalizing and thinking about what you support or what you believe in. Go ahead.
Well, and what's really, really interesting is when you and I first, all the way back to season one, I don't know,
Mhm.
30 some odd episodes ago now,
Mhm.
um, we talked a lot about values and principles.
Right.
And interestingly enough, when I was trying to solidify, kind of what some of my own values and principles were, um, I did this a very similar argument. Why is this a value? Is it really a value for me, or is it something I just really like? That's a part of my life. And it was interesting actually doing that same thing, looking at, well, challenging my own ideas. If this is really a value, then that should fall in line with a lot of other things, and if it doesn't, where's the disparaging aspects of that? We talked about the sanctity of life, and that's how we started talking about abortion and capital punishment and some of those other things well beyond that. And truth is another very, very interesting concept if you really look at truth um, as a true core value, and actually
Mhm.
following that out through your life. So, Christmas is coming. That brings up some interesting questions for a lot of parents out there. But, when you really start looking at some of these things and not only picking apart your own knee jerk reaction, but actually looking at the opposing argument, trying to find some things that you can agree with, even potentially out of there. What are the key portions of that element or argument that you can actually empathize with enough to at least understand the rationale for the argument or the point? And then that'll either allow you to retort more effectively,
Mhm.
or perhaps there is merit to this that needs to be reevaluated by something you maybe were biased against.
Yeah.
So,
And I believe intuition has served humans very well. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten to the point where we are today as just a species without intuition. So I think intuition does serve a very specific role in terms of our adaptability and our survivability. Um, but in our complex world, where things are, we're the only species to have things like government, for example, and creating things, and we're the only species that we know of that can at least look at multiple paths of decision making, and therefore we can in essence see into the future, in a matter of speaking. Okay,
yeah.
because I can play out different paths of, if I make decision A, then what's going to happen, and if I make decision B and decision C, and then this could happen and that could happen. So in a matter of speaking, I can look into the future to see what could possibly transpire. We're the only real species that can do that we know of. So because we can do that, I think it behooves us to not rely solely on intuition. We've talked about this, how
Mhm.
thinking is very difficult. People
Yes.
normally don't think. All we do is we think about and try to develop reasons why we should just believe what we already believe. And that's why I say it normally just takes one. It's the rule of one. Should I believe it or should I not believe it? As long as I can find one, whichever one that is. Now, most people are not going to say, they're not going to say, should I believe it or should I not? Let me find one for each. They don't do that.
Right.
They're in, because that would be acting without intuition.
Hmm.
Again, what I'm saying is, if if something, what is your thought? I believe in capital punishment. If I were to say that, people are going to immediately have an intuitive response to that. Either yes, I'm for it, or no, I'm not. And and now they've already gone down one path. So all they need to stay on that one path is one example to confirm that bias, and they're locked in.
Yeah, and we had a really good exercise in this actually with our show on are people inherently good or evil?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Because we actually we picked this apart that exact same way, and you and I were on the exact opposite end of the spectrum on that. I think we still are actually,
Mm-hmm.
but nevertheless, we actually did the very similar exercise, being able to look at the arguments for both, and I think that's important. And again, our intuition has served us well as a species. We are still here. Um, and you eloquently pointed out the entire universe is trying to kill us every day. And the
Every day.
fact that we survive every day is a testament to our intuition, because most of the time we're not sitting and analyzing, should I go left or straight at the red light up ahead? We intuitively are making decisions. And that's why I said most of our intellectual capacity and decision making happens within less than 2 seconds. I mean, we are making decisions that way all of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying abandon just your intuition, but understand that your intuition also builds on your base of knowledge. So every time you start to analyze some of those things and those beliefs that you have, are people inherently good or evil? The more you analyze that, the more your intuition may change based on new information stored away in your brain.
Yeah.
So your intuition may become more quote unquote intuitive, if you will. And you might be surprised. You might land in some better places.
Yeah.
Later on.
And you're absolutely right. We have to rely on that intuition, because can you imagine if you had to spend, by every decision that you came to, you had to rationalize it and figure it out before you could actually make a decision? We wouldn't be able to function. We wouldn't be able to
I wouldn't be able
function.
to leave the house. I'd still be trying to figure out what to wear in the morning.
Right.
You know,
should I or should I not take a shower?
Yeah. No, that's an easy one. I mean, I don't need to come up with 3 reasons for or against. I can tell you, shower every day is a good thing.
Yeah. Let me read another one from Epictetus.
All right.
Okay. He says here, it is the act of an ill-instructed man to blame others for his own bad condition. It is the act of one who has begun to be instructed to lay the blame on himself, and of one whose instruction is completed, neither to blame another nor himself.
Well, that's cool. I like that a lot. Actually, that reminds me of a rant I was on not long ago about actually taking some responsibility for your life and quit blaming everybody else for what you do or do not have. And all the bad stuff that happens to you is nobody else's fault.
Well, and let's start with the first part of those. So there are 3 things that Epictetus says there. The first part, he says, it is the act of an ill-instructed man to blame others for his own bad condition. I see this a lot. We see people that they just want to, I failed at this, not because of anything I did, but because the big man's got me down. Government is oppressing me. I failed because the 1% doesn't pay enough in taxes, or I failed because somebody put up a strip mall next to my business, my place of business, and that pulled all of the customers away from my business, right? So it is an ill-instructed man to blame others for his bad condition.
Yep. I've said something and actually heard something like that before. So the ignorant blame everyone else for their problems.
The ignorant blame everybody else. Yeah, they blame everybody else for their problems.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that Epictetus says is, it is the act of one who has begun to be instructed to lay the blame on himself. So somebody who's learning now.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're expanding their mind, they're acquiring new knowledge, they're actually starting to look into things. Now they tend to take everything onto themselves, because somewhere along the lines they heard, hey, you control a lot of what you're involved in.
Right. This is the person who just fell down into a ditch because they were, and somebody else looks down and says, well, what did you learn? you
Right.
know?
And I
Well, I
think there's
guess I should.
value there.
Oh, absolutely.
I think once you're starting to learn here and you start realizing and you start putting the blame on yourself and you start blaming yourself for it, I think that's a good path to start on, but it's not the path to live on.
Well, no, I'm not saying you beat yourself up over every single freaking thing, but you and I talked about this with the effects of success and failure just last week. And what did we say? Success teaches you nothing.
Correct.
Failure, this is where all of the lessons are. And if you can take that in a approach failure and approach life in an optimistic light, that even the bad things that happen in, to, and around you have life lessons to be learned from, it's not depressing, it's uplifting because it allows you to recognize that you have the power and ability through your own self reflection and education to change your future, to not let the same stupid stuff happen to you over and over again. That's the biggest difference between the ignorant man and the self-educated one. The ignorant person will never be able to get out of the rut of a just being dealt a dead hand.
Yeah.
You and I know people like this. Actually, one of my best friends from high school, bless his heart, he will never get out of this his whole life. He goes through his entire life, always has and always will, very much stuck in the mentality that he got dealt a shitty hand of cards very early on. And so he will never get out of it. And so, as long as today sucked a little bit less than yesterday, that's the best life he's ever going to have.
I think we all know at least one of those people.
Yeah. And, I think the self educating person says, you know what? Today sucked. What can I learn from that? And how can I make that better tomorrow? Because that's what I can control. If I relinquish myself that everything is outside of my hands and I'm just a pawn along the chessboard of life and I can get struck down by a meteor at any time and somebody's just going to come, then I have no control over it. That's very monotonous and pointless. And I have no value at that point because there's nothing I can do to change my outcomes. If I, as I educate myself and say, okay, this was a bad situation, I took some hits, but what can I learn from it so that next round I can go out and do even a little bit better? Okay, that was better. Here's what I still can improve on. And that self improvement lends to illumination and education in the life that actually I think will bring happiness throughout. So
The last thing Epictetus says, the last one of this triad here is of one whose instruction is completed, neither to blame another nor himself. And I think that's just a form of wisdom,
mhm,
because if you're wise there and something happens, you recognize, yeah, you know what, there might be part of that which I can control, but there might also be other parts of it that I didn't have any control over either.
sure,
And so it's virtuous to at least understand where the blame lies and how much of the blame lies with myself or with somebody else if somebody else is involved. So therefore you can see what you control to try to make the next situation better. But then it also either puts you in a position where either A, I can work with you. Let's say something happened to me and you contribute portion of that. I can now work with you and say, hey, you know what? This is
mhm,
your this is what you own in that, and we can strengthen and build our relationship a little bit better.
right,
Or if it's somebody like you're a politician, and I don't have any way to get to you. Well, I know what I controlled. I know what you controlled, and now I'm not going to put all the blame on me because I'm not necessarily going to. I don't. There's no reason for me to take all the blame, but there's also not necessarily a reason for you to take all that blame either. And
right.
I learned what he's saying here is a learned person, a wise person understands that.
Right. And this reminds me of something my grandfather used to say when lamenting on situations that had happened. Is there, he would say, was there anything about that that you could have done differently to change the outcome? Essentially asking, what about that particular situation was within your realm of control? And I do like that much more than saying, what part of the blame lies on you? Because blame is very, of course, it's very negative. It's very penal almost. Because with blame comes responsibility, comes punishment, etc. Control, I think allows the person to look at a situation understanding their own influence as far as their own abilities, or the boundary line of their conduct and what they're able to relatively affect. So in any kind of situation, if there's mutual control over multiple parties, that at least allows you to recognize where, no matter what I could have done, this is the end of the extent of my conduct, the boundary line of my conduct. I can only control this sphere right here around me to this point. Then everything else is outside of me, and I'm actually free. I'm liberated to release that and say, then it has no effect on me. It's outside of my control, it's outside of my realm and sphere of influence, and I'm okay to let that go. I do not have to take that into myself. I don't have to make that a part of me as a person. I don't have to internalize that part of that.
Good stuff. Let's do one more here. We got
Okay.
Epictetus says, "Whoever then wishes to be free, let him neither wish for anything nor avoid anything which depends on others."
Say that, repeat that one.
Sure.
Mhm.
Whoever then wishes to be free, let him neither wish for anything nor avoid anything which depends on others.
Okay.
So, so the first part of this, let him neither wish for anything that depends on others, which means if if you produce something, let's say you produce widgets,
Mhm.
I should not wish for the widget.
Okay.
Because if I wish, and we see this all the time in our own
Sure.
society,
Sure.
we see this
Mhm.
in our society where we look at the 1%, for example, and people say, well, I want what they have. We had a politician, I think it was either the mayor of LA or maybe the governor of LA or governor of California, who basically let the cat out of the bag and said that that his intention is to redistribute wealth.
Mhm.
Right? We have people that want to literally take from those who have and redistribute that wealth to people who do not have. And a lot of people fit that billet where they look at something that somebody has and says, well, I want that, so I'm going to take it from you. And that's a very bad place to be in, even if we
Mhm.
try to leverage our politicians to get it legally, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what we're essentially doing is, let's steal from you legally and give to me because you have more than I have. So what Epictetus is saying is, if you want to be free, stop looking at what others have and wanting what they have.
Right. Right. Envy and covetousness is that only enslaves you to the situation of feeling slighted.
Right.
That goes back to what I was talking about before, about a person who goes through life and is always looking at or feeling like they got dealt a shitty hand
Right.
and they'll never be able to do better. It's also what we talked about with just recently about where is your own control or realm of influence.
Yeah.
I can't control what other people have or don't have, but that's not for me to have to worry about. That's
I don't
their
have to worry
issue.
about it. Right. It's
That's
their
their
issue.
problem. Somebody down the street may have a boat, and I go, that's not fair. I want a boat. How come I don't get a boat? Well, okay, what am I going to do? Go take the boat? Well, now it's my boat. Now I got to get all,
I
I
got to
have
deal with all
no
the
what. Now
crap.
I got to deal with all that stuff.
Right.
And next thing you know, I mean, and ultimately that's not going to get you any happier.
Mm-mm.
And so if you're able to actually only wish for the things that you actually have the power to control, then you have the authority to go out and do that. Or just say, you know what? I'm happy with what I got and I don't have to wish for
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. It's funny. I talk about this with, like, my house, for example. You've seen my house.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think my house is a big house by any stretch of the imagination, but I also think that my house is too big.
Well, especially for the minimalist that you are now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want a tiny house, but I know I would never be able to convince, you know,
Oh,
the
stop it. Don't put the blame on your wife or your lady because you couldn't live in a tiny house and have a room for all of your Skynet computer stuff.
Oh, if the whole place was just the Skynet computer stuff, I'd be happy. But I want to have a smaller house, and even if I could afford, and I know I could afford a larger house, I don't want a larger house and people say, well, why wouldn't you want a larger house? Because I have to I have to deal with all the crap that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to deal with all of the maintenance that comes with a bigger house. I live in Arizona. I don't even want to think about cooling a
I was
house
going to say
that's
that for
bigger than
you,
my
an
house.
air conditioning unit or 5 would be necessary.
Oh yeah, and I don't want to pay the taxes on something
Mm-hmm.
that's bigger than what I have. I want to downsize. I wanted something smaller where, because I would rather save some of that money and be able to use it on other things. I'd rather use it for experiences. I'd rather go on either take a take like a cooking class, for example, or go on a vacation or something, right? I would rather do something.
I almost thought you were going to say cruise. I really did for some reason. Thought you were going
Well,
to. I
I'll
was
do
like,
that too.
no, you would not. That's a lot of people on a
That is
what
a lot of
might
people.
look like a really big boat until
Yeah.
you get there with all the you would die
Yeah.
because you couldn't
I
get in the car and leave and
I
go
want I
peace
like
out.
the idea of a cruise, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I actually want a smaller house. I would love to just have like, just a smaller house. Um so anyway, the idea again here is stop wishing for what you don't have.
Mhm.
Stop comparing yourself to somebody else and wishing what they have, because you know what, quite frankly, there's a lot of garbage and baggage that can come with a lot of that other stuff that
Right.
they have. But the other
Well,
thing here is Epictetus says, but do not avoid anything which depends on others.
mhm.
So we shouldn't just simply say I'm not going to be a part of society anymore. We have to, we still have to interact, and we have to, I'm not going to grow my own food, nor am I going to go hunt for my own meat, for example. I know that's kind of a
Right.
crazy example, but it's still true. I still am going to interact with society, because that's just better for everybody within society. I'm still going to buy my food at the grocery store. I'm not going to butcher my own animals, you know.
I think this is a very interesting passage for you, or at least part of this for you.
Why is that?
When it comes to relying on other people, I don't think we should become dependent on other people to provide for our own well-being and happiness,
Correct.
which I think is the key.
Right.
Now that doesn't mean that you become a recluse and
No.
move off the grid and go live in a shack like a hermit either.
Right.
But do not become dependent on other people to provide for your own well-being, emotional, spiritual, personal, physical, etc.
Right. So good stuff.
That is good stuff.
Yeah.
I like that. We should do more of that.
So we can certainly do more of it. Obviously, Epictetus wrote more than what. Actually, Epictetus didn't write any of this,
Oh,
which is quite funny. What's interesting is Epictetus was actually a slave for a while.
okay.
He was a slave, but he didn't actually write any of these things. Um, he didn't write the Enchiridion at all. He had a lackey. he
He had
had
a
a
snurdly.
he had a Padawan. Okay, he had a Padawan that he was mentor to, and the Padawan basically just wrote all of the lessons and things that Epictetus taught him, and then the Padawan is the one who actually published all of this. So
Okay.
Epictetus didn't actually sit down and write the Enchiridion, although Epictetus is credited as writing the Enchiridion. Interesting.
Understand.
So, all right.
Very cool.
So good stuff. Well, I think that just about does it for this particular episode. I don't know about you. I had fun.
That was good. I liked it.
So, as always, if you send us, you can find all of our stuff at fusionunderground.net. You can find us at Facebook at facebook.com/AZ Fusion Underground. Send us hate mail, contact at fusionunderground.net. If you go out to our website, you'll find all of our audio links to our podcast, our audio version. You'll also find the link to our YouTube channel. If you go on YouTube, if you just do Fusion Underground, we're the first ones that pop up. So that's always good. We are on like Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Apple,
Google Podcast.
Stitcher, Google
Yeah.
Podcasts. We're on all the podcasts. So we get disseminated out to all of them. So find us where you find all your favorite podcasts. All right. Well,
all right.
for Jason Moret, I'm Manuel Ramirez, and as always, you've been listening to the Fusion Underground. Cheers,
Have a
everybody.
good night.
Merry Christmas. You know what?
Oh,
I was
what?
gonna say something to you
Uh-oh.
before I hit the whole
Before the exit music so that
before the
everybody
exit
can hear.
music.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
was gonna, and then I forgot what I was gonna say. So
So all right. Tune in next week.
yeah, maybe I'll remember. But happy Christmas.
Merry
Merry
Christmas,
Christmas.
everyone.
Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is, whatever it's called. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Peace out.